Drop the gun. You are under arrest. Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
I'll buy that for $1.
Do you expect me to talk?
Hello and welcome to episode 156 of Do You Expect Us to Talk? I'm Becca and joined by my fellow law enforcement co-hosts Chris Byrne and Dave Bond. How are you?
Good evening, folks.
I'm buying something for a dollar, apparently.
I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah. When this film is set, like 2029 or whatever, what do you reckon you'd get for $1?
Not a lot.
Particularly on expected inflation from the late 80s, which has obviously been lower than that. But
yeah, it's kind of like an insult. So yeah, I'll buy it for
Whatever the cheapest
a small
denomination
amount.
is.
A small amount.
Yeah, and you're basically being offered a threesome. Is that all you're willing to pay?
Maybe some champagne, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're so excited. This week we begin a new retrospective series. I've inserted a cheesy quote here, but I'm not going to say it because you've already said it. So I'll just instead say, Dead or Alive, You're Coming With Me, as we review RoboCop, starring Peter Weller, Nancy Allen, Miguel Ferrer, Kurtwood Smith, Ronnie Cox, Dan O'Herlihy, Ray Wise, and Felton Perry, with a score by Basil Polidorus, script written by Edward Neumeier and Michael Miner, directed by Paul Verhoeven. That's how I'm going to pronounce his name, so apologies.
From the director of Showgirls.
Yes. Oh my god, that just takes me back to the Adam and Joe fake version of it. And anyway, yes, released in 1987.
Talking of showgirls, that was the first thing that came to mind when they said there was a character in the new Bond film called Know Me.
Ah.
Because the lead character in Showgirls is called Know Me, and I always thought what a ridiculous name that sounded then.
Wait, is it going to be a first name or last name? I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Know Me, Nomi. But yeah, Elizabeth Berkley's character in Showgirls is called that.
Yeah.
Funny, Paul Verhoeven sort of went on to do he did Total Recall next, and then he sort of went into like the erotic thriller, didn't he?
Yeah. It was it Basic Instinct, wasn't it?
He did Basic Instinct after Total Recall. And then I think he probably did Showgirls next. Yeah, he did Showgirls next. Then he did Starship Troopers, which is probably the closest thing he ever did to this.
Yeah, that's probably one of his more controversial films.
And the film I didn't know he'd made was Black Book. He did go back into his native language to make the film with Clarence Van Houten. Yeah.
He did that Invisible Man film, or was it?
Hollow Man.
Hollow Man.
Yeah, he does kind of delve into. I mean, main thing I sort of know about is obviously like sci-fi sort of thrillers and with a touch of body horror. But yeah, if films like Black Book, for example, there's kind of more like sort of intrigue, mystery, a little bit of historical drama as well.
It's a good film.
No, really good film. I think I saw it upon release.
This was
I was surprised by it.
This was his second English language film after Flesh and Blood, which is a Rutger Hauer film. Rutger Hauer having passed away since we last recorded, so
didn't kill him off.
He's safe from us. He's safe from us now.
We didn't do it.
We didn't do it.
He didn't fall under the.
It's one of those weird things where when his death was announced, he died like the previous week. He just like wasn't announced at all, so he must like kept it like completely private.
Yeah, which is fine.
Yeah.
I always have a problem when the press do that. So-and-so's secret battle with cancer, and you go, no, that's the wrong word. It's private.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't want to declare
They
it.
don't own these people. Died at 75.
They keep it from us,
Yeah. Although obviously we did discuss him in Batman Begins, but he survived a couple of years after that, so I don't think we're directly responsible.
Yeah.
Edward Neumeier, who wrote this, this was his first script, I believe. And funnily enough, talking about Rutger Hauer, he said the initial idea came from seeing a poster of Blade Runner. Now, he said his first draft was 81, so I'm assuming with Blade Runner being an 82 film, that what he saw was a coming soon, like a teaser poster for it. He was talking to a friend, he saw this poster, and he said, what's that about? And he said, oh, and the friend very simplistically and reductively said to him, oh, it's about cops chasing robots. And then they got into a conversation about cop robots as an idea. And that sort of went from there. It's a long way from there to what we ended up getting. It ended up being merged with somebody else's script. Somebody else had written a script called Super Cop, which was similar. From there, he's gone on to. He was quite young when he did that. He was only about 24 when that came about. But he did write on the original sequel to this film, which we're going to cover next week. He wrote on Starship Troopers. I believe he wrote on the 2014 remake of RoboCop, which we'll cover in actually 4 weeks because we've got a Tarantino film in the middle. And he is partnered up with Neil Blomkamp for the RoboCop Returns film, which is going to basically be a little bit like Terminator Dark Fate and just follow on from an earlier film. It's going to follow on from the first film and ignore sequels and reboots and stuff and actually try to use the stylings of this film. He said, Blomkamp has said, I want to make it as though it was Paul Verhoeven's next film after the first one. Mm. So we'll wait and see how we go with that. Other points of interest with it. Paul Verhoeven, when he first saw the script, literally threw it in the bin. Bit theatrically, to be fair, because there's no need for that. But I think his wife took it out and sort of had a little look at it. The script, that is. And
give it a bit of polish, you know.
Yeah. I didn't like that script. Oh well, let me cheer you up. And she had a look at the script. And I've got to overstress all of this now. And actually said to him, "There's stuff in here that's worth looking at." And when he sort of started looking at through the script properly, he started seeing the sort of satirical act. Satirical, is that the right word?
Yeah, it's more satire, isn't it?
Satirical implies humour, but yes, it's certainly social commentary that this film could offer, and obviously that sort of came from that. In terms of casting, obviously Peter Weller. I don't really know what Peter Weller was known for before this, if anything. The only thing I remember from around this era was Blue Jean Cop, which I can't remember if it's before or after this.
Probably after, I think.
Yeah, the original idea was a much bigger physical actor to do the film. And I'm trying to remember who that was. I think, funnily enough, Rutger Hauer may have been one of the first choices for the film. It's in all the stuff I've read today somewhere, but I can't really remember what exactly. But there were a couple of choices. And
Schwarzenegger maybe one of them, wasn't he?
I don't remember seeing. Michael Ironside was the other possible. I always think of Michael Ironside as a bad guy, really, but they chose Weller for a couple of reasons. One was, the bulky kit they were going to put the actor in once they'd sort of settled after several drafts of the design on this sort of outer shell that it was going to be. They realised they probably wanted a smaller actor. They needed someone slighter. They needed someone who they felt could. Funny how I heard it phrased, but it was something like could communicate pathos with literally just the bottom half of their face. When Weller was cast, he trained very hard for it, but then got in the outfit and found he couldn't move in it at all. So they had to sort of stop and give him a little bit more time to sort of train, because he trained in some sort of padded outfit for it. The only other bit of casting that sort of evokes what we were talking about in the very last episode was we've always known that Pierce Brosnan very nearly played Bond in 1987, having been cast in 86. The reason he wasn't, for those who don't listen to our Bond commentaries, and I will have to slightly retell the story here, when Roger Moore left the role in the mid-80s, they went casting around for a new guy. They looked at Sam Neill, they looked at Timothy Dalton, they looked at Pierce Brosnan. They offered it to Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton was off making another film and couldn't meet the dates they had. So they went to Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan was cast. He accepted it. They did all the sort of photography, the poses with him and the Walther. I think they even did some reference photography for the posters and so on. And I believe somewhere there are posters existing of him in the Living Daylights. But he was filming a show called Remington Steele, which had just been cancelled. But there was a 60-day option on it, that the studio had 60 days to change their mind. And what they were doing all the way through that 60 days was reruns were continuing on TV of Remington Steele. Word got out that Brosnan was the new Bond, and suddenly there was a spike in viewing figures. So the studio went fantastic and re-optioned it right at the end. Cubby Broccoli didn't want a guy who was playing a similar-ish role on TV, which people could watch for free, playing Bond. He wouldn't. Brosnan had to drop out. The sad thing being, Remington Steele only did another 6 episodes because the viewing figures tanked again, and that was that. And we got Timothy Dalton, and Brosnan came along in the mid-90s, as we all know. There was another casting sort of casualty from all of that. The female lead of that show was a lady called Stephanie Zimbalist, and she was cast in this film as Lewis, the Nancy Allen character and Murphy's partner, and she had to drop out when Remington Steele was re-optioned. So that was an interesting
Remington
thing.
Steele.
I think the only other thing I want to mention before we sort of go into what we think of the film and all the rest of it and experience with it is the task of creating the suit and all the sort of makeup effects went to a guy called Rob Bottin. Rob Bottin did the special effects for The Thing. And when actually you see how they manage the sort of animatronics and the stop motion and the makeup and the visual look of this film.
Yeah, this all kind of looks very similar, doesn't it? I think.
Whether it looked, but he also worked. He worked on The Howling. He worked on Inner Space. He works on Total Recall with Verhoeven after this. Mm-hmm. And obviously, if you remember the end of that film, when Arnie's eyes are bulging out and all the rest of it, that was him. And he went on to work on the first Mission Impossible and various other things. But The Thing is probably the film that sticks out to me. So a lot of the look of the films and the prosthetics and all of that sort of thing and makeup effects come from that man. What's your history with this film, guys? When did you first see it? What did you think of it? That sort of thing.
Well, I first saw it recorded from a Saturday night on ITV. So I watched it on the Sunday morning. And this was like before the days where I didn't realise that stuff was edited down on TV. I just thought, they just showed the film and that's it. It's just have ad breaks. So like watching this, I was thinking, this isn't that bad at all. I thought it was meant to be like ultra violent stuff.
This is meant to be really hard.
This is just no more than a 12, really. You know. So yeah, for quite a large part, so I went without seeing a very, very edited version of it. I mean, yeah, you saw like bits of blood and squib shots, but it wasn't like to the extent that the actual like the stuff with Murphy, right? You don't even see any like when he first gets his hand blown off. That's cut out, so you just see like him get shot with a shotgun and him getting up like sort of almost like squatting. So you don't see anything else.
Yeah. And the version, because there is an uncut version and a theatrical release version, and the version on UK Netflix certainly, and I imagine it'll be the same anywhere in the world now, is the uncut version. So his hand being blown off wasn't in the original US theatrical cut. The bit with his arm being blown off isn't in it. And some of the gore around the first sort of Ed 209 shooting in the boardroom isn't there. There's other things as well. A spike to Bodega's neck near the end of the film. You see, I think you don't quite see the spurt of blood afterwards because along with headbutts, censors were very sensitive to spurts of blood particularly. It's just worth mentioning, actually, this film got an X rating 11 separate times.
Oh, God.
The NC-17 didn't exist at that time. That didn't exist till Henry and June years later, a Uma Thurman film, but which is worth seeing for entirely unwholesome reasons. So it got an X rating 11 separate times, and they had to sort of take a little bit of the blood out and a few different things, and it squeaked through with an R. And apparently the X rating is just, it's because you get more descent. Verhoeven always said that the cut version is actually more unsettling, but that's obviously something we can only guess about now. The only other thing I did want to say that I forgot to mention at the outset is this film is made for a relatively skinny budget. I always thought sort of a big release like this, it's quite ballsy to make it R-rated and stuff, but actually it's only a $13 million film, and $1 million of that was all the work they did on the suit. So yeah, it's only a $13 million film. So yeah, you first started off with like a cut version of this, basically. So did you get a bit of a shock when you saw the uncut one?
Well, it was like the slow drip of realization when you start see read magazine articles, like so you see the stuff with like the guy who turns into a monster after like going into like the toxic waste. And you think, I don't remember any of that in that film. So, but
yeah, because the car misses him in the cut version. Yeah,
yeah. In the version in my first TV, you just see like the van go into the and obviously like it floods out the back, but that's all you see. So you just we crashed into that and he died. Yeah. So.
In the theatrical version, he does come out like all of that, but he doesn't get hit by Bodega's car, I don't think.
Oh, right.
So he doesn't get like smashed to pieces. I think it swerves and misses him or something. They have to use alternate cuts and shots to get around it. But yeah. So what about you, Becca? When did you first see this? Do you remember?
Oh God. No.
So it's your first viewing?
No, I don't think it would have been like a film studies because we were all under 18. Probably at university, I imagine, which is perhaps with friends. We rented it on DVD or something, perhaps, or maybe a roommate had it. And yeah, just sort of discovered it through there, really. Although I don't have a memory of seeing any of the sequels, and I only found out recently there was a TV series. That's quite embarrassing. Missed the remake at the cinema as well, unfortunately. I just swerved it somehow. But as I say, it's kind of one of those films that's always been on my list to get around to. It mentioned off air that somebody suggested doing Predator. Of course, that's another series that I've managed to avoid. But all these kind of films have always, they've been on my to-watch list. And I'm kind of grateful to this podcast and for you guys for kind of not forcing me to watch them, but bumping them further up my list, shall we say.
Yeah. Well, Rocky was like that, wasn't it?
Well, exactly.
And I think it'll be the same when we get to Jaws. I'm not sure you've seen them.
I'm kind of looking forward to Jaws, but kind of not looking forward to it. Sadly, it was re-released.
PG now. You got nothing to worry about. Yeah.
I've been to Universal a couple of times, and done the studio tour where he comes up and takes a bite out of you. But yeah, no, there's one part in Jaws I always get to, and then I can't watch anymore. It just freaks me out completely. But I like swimming, and it doesn't make me scared to go back in the water. Yeah. Any more than it's like it makes me scared to take another shower. Yeah, I can't really remember how. Yeah, probably sometime after it might have been at college. But yeah, no, it's one of those films where I thought I haven't seen it, tick it off my list. Yeah, some of the ultra violence, as I'll dub it, was a little bit too much. Not too much. I kind of obviously the Toxic Avenger at the end. I sort of hid behind my hands. But I think the way it's portrayed is quite excessive, quite cartoony, a little bit maybe like Tarantino-esque style, maybe. In that respect, I can stomach that just about, but that's probably about my level of gratuitous violence.
The guy who gets hit by the toxic waste we've actually seen before in a tiny, tiny little cameo when he was a much younger man. There's a bit in Rocky 2 where a guy in a cast on his head asks Rocky to sign it. That's him.
That's that guy. Bit of intertext seen him before. Why not?
He was a little guy with a shock of red hair. Yeah.
Yeah, he later to be like one of the main cast of ER though, didn't he? Later on,
he went on to be Romano. I watched it long enough that he was in it, and then I went off to university and did other things, and I stopped watching it, not because it was bad. My life moved in a different direction. I didn't get round to it, but I am aware of the Romano character, and that's him. And that's probably what he's best known for, with general audiences anyway. But so I guess other sort of casting things, I guess just almost fairly randomly, just picking on a few things. Miguel Ferrer is someone we've only mentioned on this show because we were recording when we found out he died. So if you go back to something we recorded in early 2017, it would possibly be Superman, somewhere around there, or one of the commentaries around there.
It was before we mentioned him as well, because he would have been in Iron Man 3, so it would have been before.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
on No Man 3,
yeah,
didn't he?
so
So yeah,
he
he didn't suffer the curse.
So so that wasn't our fault.
Yeah. Kurtwood Smith was, you notice he's apparently, I always think of him as a villain now, but he was known for playing, he's playing very much against type here, and the putting him in the rimless glasses and stuff was trying to just draw out a distinction between his look and his character, because that's a little bit more scholarly in sort of stereotyping.
He's sort of known for kind of playing like intellectual roles as well, and plus he was the dad on that 70s show.
Yeah, and Ronnie Cox similarly. Ronnie Cox did not play bad guys at this point in his career.
No, he was very much cast against type here, wasn't he?
But it's really effective because they are actually quite good villains as well.
I think they're both superb.
Really good performances all round.
Because because Roddy Cox does that I'm an arsehole executive stuff quite well, whereas Kurtwood Smith, I mean, it's almost like a touch of brilliance because he has this really sleazy, like because he doesn't look like someone who should belong in this scene, but because there's a sense of unease about him because he's just like. He's just so like almost like diseased in the mind, but almost like just direct. He strikes me someone, especially like with the glasses and his specific look. He looks like someone who spent years working in an office or for a firm somewhere and just went fucking insane. And he has that Kurtwood Smith, yeah. And he's just like do you know what I mean? And has that kind of dangerous look about him, the guy who who's just gone mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Cinematographer Jos Vacano is known for a load of Paul Verhoeven stuff, not surprisingly. Also shot Das Boot, though. Nancy Allen. Nancy Allen was probably best known at this point for her roles in, well, I would think Carrie would spring to mind. She was one of the characters in that. Chris something or other, I'm not quite sure without looking. So that's what she was best known for, but she was also married to Brian De Palma in the early 80s and was in the film Blowout, which I would recommend to anyone. That's a John Travolta film along the same lines as The Conversation, Enemy of the State, those sort of man on the run from a sort of hidden...
It's got a cracking ending as well. I'm not saying what it is, but it's got a cracking ending.
Just an absolutely brilliant film. She's now again, other links to stuff we've covered. She's now retired from acting. She retired in her 50s and started working in breast cancer treatment activism because her close friend Wendy Jo Sperber died. Wendy Jo Sperber played Marty McFly's sister in Back to the Future films and died in her 40s. They're just sort of minor sort of things to point out as we go along, and we'll talk about a few other sort of people as we go through it, no doubt. Do we want to just do some opening thoughts on the films, guys? As I've spoke most so far, one of you guys want to start?
Yeah, Becca, what's your opening thought?
Yes. I tend to struggle a little bit with this film just because of the body horror and the ultra violence, as I call it. So it just kind of like jarred me a little bit. But I think he's certainly a really interesting filmmaker for sure. And what strikes me also about his films is the satirical quality. Basically, holding up a mirror to society. This is what the future is going to be like 10, 20, 30 years down the line, which I think is really clever. And it's one of like my favourite genres of film. If there's kind of like elements of like politics or satire there, then I tend to enjoy it. Because it's got a kind of like intellectual edge to it, even though I'm probably not that clever. But that's why films like this kind of really, they stay in your memory basically. So it's not just like your everyday action thriller where you sort of leave your brain at the door. There's actually a multi-layered character as well, and you can see like there are elements of RoboCop, or the Alex Murphy character is effectively a figure of Christ essentially. There are lots of allegories, to sort of the Bible and to being sort of almost a Christ-like role as well. Especially where he walks on water towards the end, and sort of like was full damage with bullets as well, being like a crown of thorns. There's a lot of like religious elements there as well, which is quite interesting to unpick. But yeah, there's lots of layers to this film. Like on one layer, it does kind of seem, as if it's just like your average, well, not your average, but your typical action movie, from the 80s. But when you start to unpick it, as it's really multi-layered, and it's probably one. If you're going to do a list of like all-time greatest films, it's got to be up there. Surely, it's really hugely influential as well. So I kind of, despite the gore and the violence, I kind of this time around, I sort of enjoyed it more than I thought I would. So anyway, Chris.
It's very much cartoony, isn't it, Becca? It's it does have like it's not very real world because it almost looks like a cartoon. So maybe that's
it does. It's quite gratuitous, isn't it? I think as well. Like he doesn't the guy at the end who gets shot by Ed, ED 209. He gets shot and then some. Like he's not left alive at the end of that. Yeah. But it's quite gratuitous and quite cartoony. Yeah, I think you're right in that respect.
Especially with the satire element as well. It
was very satirical.
Like you got the old man there, and I've just seen someone just get butchered in the boardroom, and he's like, "I'm very disappointed."
I'm very disappointed. Exactly.
I kept thinking this film is almost like a little bit like a punk rock song. It's very flippant with, I don't think there's much intelligence in terms of thought driving it, but it's very visceral, and I think it drives more for more intelligent discussion rather than I don't think the film has a lot to say really, but it does provoke thought, so that's one as a thought. It's got two really great villains.
Performance is really great. Definitely, yeah. I didn't mention about that. It's interesting because obviously Detroit, Michigan as well is really interesting, especially in terms of it's Motive City, isn't it? It's
Detroit.
Yeah, exactly. It's known for its kind of motor production, and that's got quite an interesting history in itself. And even though I think it was filmed in and around the city and also Dallas, because it had quite a futuristic skyline, which I think is pretty cool and pretty iconic as well. So it's kind of got that. I'm struggling with my words here. I do apologise. It's quite hard. I think it does have a little bit of intelligence about it. It's kind of like the future of the city that's kind of pushing forward with industry, trying to become more motorised, more mechanised. And it's trying to think, where's it going to take us in the near future? What's going to happen? So we've got this, everything's being controlled by, I'll say, what you mentioned earlier about the Terminator series, very much like Skynet, kind of, one Omnicorp, is it, OCP, one company that's taking over everything that's, invasive in every kind of aspect of your life, pretty much. Taking this idea of this city that's very much on the grow. And if you watch Michael Moore's documentaries, that'll tell you how that turned out. And just basically kind of looking, okay, so what could the negative outcomes of this be? Where if you kind of went down the road of corruption and all these shady deals being made in the boardroom, where could that actually take us? So yeah, there's like a little modicum of intelligence there. But I would agree, it is very visceral for sure.
Yeah, no, there is some intelligence. I wasn't like being that, but but saying it's very much straight up front with it, and I don't think I think it's more about giving you stuff to chew on. So that's what I kind of like. It's a bit more of a punk rock song, because it's very much like, yeah, fuck you kind of thing, very happy-go-lucky. It kind of knows that it's a silly concept and just like embraces it almost with a straight face.
Although I don't know what the rights owners to this saw this property seeing as they spun off into like animation.
Yeah.
And
a TV
like
series.
And by the third film, it's like PG-13.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. It's almost like they wanted their cake and eat it, in that I do think the 80s stands out to me as a decade where, for the first time, they were let off the leash in what they could show in terms of sex and violence. So you can argue whether sex scenes are ever needed in most films that they're in, but I saw more gratuitous use of that sort of thing in films of this era than any other. And it really does come off as, we can, so we will. So, I think with a lot of films of this time, they've just got a lot of content in them that are just almost a can to a will.
Yeah, I think that sums up the 80s in general, really, because I think the 80s was a decade where everyone generally just sort of like let loose. It's like, oh, finally, everyone started making money now after the 70s, so everyone, and then like, yay, there's now no rules now. And I think, well, that has its good parts because everyone sort of started experimenting a bit more. There was a little bit of a hang on. Should we do this? Should there be
mature. If you're going to include sex in films, you've got to embed it a little bit more intelligently than some of the films of this era. I mean, there's a tit shot in the start of this film that's there for no other reason than look, there's a pair of tits, and it's not actually shot particularly voyeuristically, but it's just this idea of this is adult and we're making it as adult as we can. I think what.
Like boobies,
and I think perhaps that's why some of the really thought-provoking stuff. Because I did get a copy of 3 Days of the Condor today because we've talked about it so much. But why films went in the sort of direction they did in the 80s might just be that they became much more
everyone letting their hair down,
satisfying your senses rather than your mind. You know what I mean? Yeah,
I think also it's a little bit like, oh, I don't want to think about responsibility too much. I just want like. What's in, like, I want to just like sort of like go with what's in front of me, almost, which kind of like almost explains like the the Wall Street kind of like get rich and to hell with everything else.
Yeah,
that kind of attitude. I think that was probably sums up the 80s like quite well, really. So fast food, fast and loose.
What interests me about this film is just it's making all sorts of commentary that you would think about later without, I can only think the director knows what he's doing. So, for example, we start off with, we won't go too sequential yet, but we start off with like a news broadcast. Well, first off, that reminds me, and Frank Miller's a name we're going to come back to through this series, but it reminds me, if you go and read The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller comic book, graphic novel, trade paperback, whatever you want to call it, there is a cartoon version of it that's voiced by Peter Weller, funnily enough. Peter Weller is Batman in the Dark Knight Returns film. But a lot of the exposition and scene setting and narration in that film, in the same way as something like the Captain's Log is used in Star Trek on television, not so much now with Discovery, but certainly you would come out of an ad break and then Jean-Luc Picard would be doing a Captain's Log in order to tell you where you were and what the next bit's going to be about. They do it through the news broadcast in this film, and that's very similar to The Dark Knight Returns. There's a lot of news broadcasty bits in that. What I love about it is all these horrific cop deaths and stuff are voiced by a real newscaster, actually. The guy who's the newscaster in this, he's passed away now, but he's a guy called Mario Machado, who was a real newscaster. But it's voiced like the "and finally" item. So when you watch the news, you get all the hard-hitting stuff like politics and murders and shit. And at the end, you get the flippant article about like a swan that saved someone's life.
Yeah.
All of the news articles in this are shot like that. There's a bit, and they're like, it all has that sort of flippant and finally thing. So death has been completely desensitized in this world, which tells you, without having to tell you, that it's that commonplace. And that the society have become completely desensitized to cops' lives. Hence, they're about to strike because it's like this has become nothing to anyone. Also, there are little shots like there's a bit where RoboCop kicks a guy out or pushes a guy out of the window on his first night on duty. And the cameras outside, literally, you see the cameraman scan him down right to the floor as he hits the floor.
You see his legs like sort of like strike up as it.
Yeah. But it's that voyeurism of this society as well. So everything has become about entertainment, and the link between something being real and meaningful and impactful and it being there for entertainment has been lost. We've also got a world here where it is a bit of an extrapolation of the world it was made in, because one of the very first articles they mention is something to do with Star Wars, which was not Star Wars the film, Star Wars Reagan's policy of militarizing space, which I'm not super expert on, but it was about basically a ballistic missile shield in space. That was the idea, I think. I don't need to be corrected on that, but I'm aware I might be wrong on the actual detail of what that is. So all of that interests me. The cut between showing that sort of stuff and then going straight to advertisements, but even advertisements have trivialized things. So you get adverts for what's effectively the Butler brothers or whatever they called.
Nuclear war.
Yeah, they've made a game based around nuclear war, and stuff like that. Yeah, Nukem, that's it.
Pakistan's pulling the
So
border.
the casual indifference.
No more
to
foreign
life.
aid for you, mister.
Yeah, no more foreign aid.
Yeah, so it's trivializing, big policy issues and actually putting it in the hands of children who wouldn't remotely understand what they're doing. And that's endlessly fascinating. And it's cutting back to two newscasters who are all cheesy smiles.
Yeah, they're kind of announcing, that there's some political strife going in, Acapulco, for example. And they're sort of, delivering the news with quite cheery, cheesy smiles. And in other news, and it's like,
and
ridiculous.
In look of the broadcast, it's very like Tim Burton's Batman. The two
very
newscasters in that. So all of that sort of social commentary is seeded in very, very well as part of scene setting. So you don't have to stop the film to tell us any of this. So I think it does stand comparison with some of the best films of the 1980s because there's so much more about it. And I find it very unfortunate for people who never engaged with this film because they don't know what it is. I remember being in a supermarket or something like that with my father when this hit home release, and we walked past the video section and where they sell a few sell-through VHSs or whatever, and RoboCop was there, and he looked at it as only my dad could do and went, RoboCop, thinking it was some silly fucking throwaway sci-fi film. And actually Starship Troopers suffered from the exact same thing. It looks very B-movie, and none of the sort of satire that's laced into that film, particularly as people like Denise Richards are in it, another Bond link, really comes across to people unless they sit down and actually watch it. But what you're actually watching is an extremely well-written, tight film. It's only an hour and 40 minutes or so. It's very efficient in what it's trying to tell us. All the satire is laced in really well. The visuals are dated but very, very interesting. The whole idea it brings up around ownership. That was another thing that made me think of Star Trek. There's an episode I mentioned in the intro episode to that series where I talked about the episode Measure of a Man, where the whole idea of what is data, is he property, who's he owned by, that's addressed in this film, and we will talk about that scene to scene because there's a specific scene where it's mentioned. Treating somebody and all their life and presence in the world as a commodity. It's very, very tight. Very, very well shot. Lovely score, or lovely is probably the wrong word, but a very evocative score from Basil Polideris, who's probably best known for his Conan score. And he passed away rather young, unfortunately. So I think that's all I'm going to say, without addressing the plot as we'll go through. I think this is a really, really interesting piece of work. It is shot a little bit B-movie. It's like a high-budget B-movie. And I can understand why that would put people off. And the funny thing is they tried to make a franchise out of something that probably didn't quite have the mass appeal in this form that they thought it had. It took 50-odd million at the American box office, so it was a decent performer, but it was far from mind-blowing or highest of the year or anything like that. But yeah, I'd recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it. I really would. Yeah,
it's like the idea of this coming of like a franchise movie is almost like a gag that this film would also make if it was that self-aware. Do you know what I mean? It almost felt like, if it was able to make a comment on it probably would.
The second film opens like the second chapter in a franchise. It just does. Think of the opening scenes of something like The Dark Knight, where you cut straight to him sort of, out on duty and breaking up a gang, and that little bit to reorient you to the world. RoboCop 2 has that. But obviously we'll talk about that more next week, because I remember not thinking much of that film, but I've watched some of it already, and I will watch the rest of it and probably watch it again. There's a lot more satire in the second one than I remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's it for now. Should we discuss this film sequentially, folks?
And why not?
Okay.
And Barry Norman.
I'll buy that for $1.
Yeah, so what, Barry Norman?
So we actually we do actually start with a news article, which we've almost sort of, the nightly news. And it is about a cop who's been shot and he's hanging in there. Introduces us to the body.
Good luck, Frank.
Good luck,
Good luck, Frank.
And finally, Frank today's in hospital. It's that kind of tone to it, rather flippant.
We get introduced to the villain, even though either by a photo on a video of the like a crime boss.
Yeah.
Which is Kurtwood Smith's character. So yeah, we get stuff like kind of like it. It is an odd opening for a film because usually you want you want to get a better sense of where we are, but we get like a newscast sort of like talking to us. It's like, oh, what's this? And so where do we go from there?
It's a superb scene setter, though. It just really is.
It really sets the tone, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sets tone for the film, definitely.
Now, I can't remember if we cut to the precinct first or OCP first.
Basically, we go for that, so we also get an ad for like a heart, like a motor heart.
The Family Heart Centre. Yeah.
Oh god.
And we care.
Don't forget, we care. Oh my god.
We go to like the cop precinct where
that's another thing as well, isn't it? Obviously, like healthcare in America is very hotly contended, very expensive, and you have to have the right kind of healthcare and health plan and all the rest of it as well. And it's just it fills me with dread if I go to America and I fall ill. You just try not to be ill because you're going to be whacked with a massive bill afterwards.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh my god.
I think it's the fact that when you are over there, you'll see a commercial for like a drug, and it will say,
it will
ask your physician about this drug.
Yeah, ask a doctor if this is right for you.
Yeah, that's not the way round it's meant to fucking work.
No, that advert is actually very accurate, unfortunately.
Yeah. But it obviously gives you that we've moved on in time and technology as well.
Oh, of course, yeah. The heart would be much smaller now.
It just
yes.
you can't just get a replacement heart. It's as simple as that.
No, it's not as easy as that. But it's something like that. Like he holds up is like huge. You wouldn't get that.
It's Murphy's first day on a precinct, and we sort of debated this offline another time, but I do think they are deliberately putting their top cops in particularly dangerous areas because he's transferred in from a precinct that's not that bad. And it is kind of an almost welcome to hell kind of welcome for him. He's come in from like Metro South, and it's immediately one of their guys has died, and it's, we want you all to attend the funeral. And it is like, what are you doing here? And I think it is really they're transferring their Omni consumer products, as we're about to find out, are looking at different options for how they can automate the police, bring in, police that don't sleep, don't eat, and are difficult to take down. Therefore, RoboCops, effectively.
Because the talk of strikes sort of off from the get-go, isn't there?
Well, that's the problem when you have people, isn't it? They might take these things quite badly. Yeah. So that's our introduction to Murphy. We do see, it did make me laugh. Let's say we go into like the locker room and like women are changing with the men and things like that. So hence a quick tit shot and things like that. Not particularly, gratuitously handled, but gratuitous in intention, just because it is like, look how adult this is.
Yeah. There's something else that he carried on with Starship Troopers as well. He had like, the male and female like sort of getting undressed together, in the shower room and things like that.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly the same principle in that film. So this guy died, Fred Fredrickson or whatever he's called. And we see what a tough precinct it is because there's a fight going on, assaulting. And, lawyers are there trying to get people off who have attempted murder. Because it didn't actually kill him. Make bail, I'll pay you some money. So it's like rife with corruption. We see Lewis immediately breaking up a fight, so he's got quite a tough partner about to come his way. That's really all the major information, apart from we do see the desk sergeant, and he's no nonsense. He's not up for being bribed and stuff. But he is. We're here to work. We're not striking.
Yeah. He's your stereotypical like police sergeant, isn't he?
He's every police sergeant you've ever seen who hasn't been corrupt in a film like this. Right back through the 70s and 60s as well. Yeah, absolutely.
So, so next scene we get to is it OCP? OCP. And, we've got introduction of Ed 209. So we see is it Ed Morton?
Ed Morton.
Yeah, we see Ed Morton and his teammates.
Yes.
In the lift, and sort of like talking about like Dick Jones. And he's a bit derogative about Dick Jones, like saying
He's the old man.
Yeah,
He's at the old man's ass.
Talk about the old man, and he's always referred to as the old man, isn't he?
Yes.
It's like,
You didn't kind of hear his name. He's not referred to by as Mr. So and So.
I think that adds to that. Firstly, makes him a sort of venerated older figure that they want to impress, but it's also the fact that the old man makes him sound more like a figurehead. It makes it sound like that's how Dick Jones is able to sort of do whatever he wants because he's running it day to day.
Yeah, he's effectively running the show.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, this scene shows its age, but it's a wonderful piece of stop motion. Of course, when they did everything optically, they had to do multiple passes with the film to combine elements, and it would degrade. So you know immediately when you're seeing like a stop motion element because the whole film is like softer and a bit fuzzier.
It looks great though. It looks very charming. It's like if you look back on the old Ray Harryhausen films.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still also very dated, but hugely technically advanced for the time. And it looks very charming now, I think.
The whole point is Dick Jones has been running this project to produce this Ed 209 automated. How would we describe Ed 209 to anyone who hasn't seen this film?
It's basically a walking tank.
Yeah, a tank with legs, I will say. Giant mechanised tank.
I mean, you look at it and think, I don't see that as something that's practical. I mean,
it's basically got 4 limbs, hasn't it?
Yeah.
But it is a big tank.
But it's a big military-esque type thing. It's something that you'd put in a war zone. Like you'd have that in a.
It would be on street corners, just blowing things up.
Yeah, so
in a city battle or whatever.
So you think, rather than actually be policing, this is like, I'm not sure how capable is this, but
this is
like,
riot control, isn't it?
It is basically. It's like you have 20 seconds to comply. You have 15 seconds to comply.
Yeah. So basically, the Ed 209 obviously has a bunch of sort of pre-programmed commands that respond in certain scenarios. So the boardroom is there, and what they do is they get one guy to like point a gun at it, and then it's basically you are in violation of whatever he says, and you now have 20 seconds to comply. Put your gun down, comply.
Yeah.
You better do what he says. He drops the gun, and you've now got 15 seconds to comply. And basically, whatever this machine is supposed to respond to and down power, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And basically, that blows the shit out of this guy.
Quite literally.
Yeah, it's quite striking. You just see all the squibs just like sort of just burst out of every orifice of him. It's just
Yeah.
He is well and truly dead.
And the uncut version, it goes on for a long time. He's landed on the table, it's still shooting at him.
Yeah. And there's people there like pulling wires out, and you think, fuck.
Yeah, they're trying to stop it. Typical almost lab technicians types. The people with the sort of clipboards going shit. You're right. You mentioned it in the opening bit where you said the old man is like, "I'm very disappointed, Dick."
Well, apparently there's an offshoot line where someone said, "Call a paramedic," and then we've just got like an awkward laugh from like a test audience, and you do think, well, what the fuck's a paramedic going to do now?
General viewers watching this, Dan O'Hurley or Lurley, I don't even know how you would pronounce it. It's an Irish name. Hurley. That's probably right. Yeah.
Maybe.
Probably. He won a Best Actor Academy Award for The Adventures of Robinson Crusoe in the 50s, but he was also in Twin Peaks, which I saw very little of, but that would have been just after this. So yeah, he's quite well known for his role in Twin Peaks.
He's got this beautiful voice. He's Irish originally, isn't he? From Wrexham or somewhere like that. Yeah. But it's really nice, really speaking voice.
Is that the guy who got shot?
No, that's the old man.
Oh yes, of course, yes. Because there's another guy in this who's from Twin Peaks as well.
Is there? I don't know. I saw some of it at the time, but I didn't watch a lot of it. Halloween 3 Season of the Witch he was in as well. Looking through his filmography, there's not an awful lot else I've actually seen him in. Yeah, looking through that list, there's not much. He was in The Last Starfighter. What I just love is the fact that Bob Morton, Miguel Ferrer's character, just leaps right in to sort of, this is just a parody of the ambitious young exec, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Well, this is like boardroom politics. Is like look straight in and just like ignore what the fuck's just gone on. Like someone's just got shot to shit. Like.
Yeah, I mean the corpse is still in the room. The corpse
Yeah.
is about like 10 feet away from him.
It's not. It's barely cold. Like.
Yeah.
And he's like literally sort of sees his opportunity, and it's like, well, you know, it's like, well, you know, have your presentation prepared in 20 minutes. It's like, okay.
Which he'll have ready because he's been working on it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. Which makes me wonder how much of this is implied. So, did he sabotage Ed 209 in any way?
No, I didn't get that.
I think it's more likely to be Dick Jones's lack of attention to care because, like he says later, he doesn't really care if it works.
Yeah, he used to talk about sort of, yeah, like...
It's just a thought. He's got a presentation ready to go.
I think, yeah, I mean, look, I don't know, but I wouldn't have thought so. I think it was just more opportunistic, like, the idea of, like, basically suits in boardrooms, like, sort of fumbling around with these big ideas, sort of, like, messing with stuff that you actually know fuck all about.
Yeah.
You know, it's that
this is
kind of thing.
high-end tech, and they're a bunch of execs.
Yeah.
And we see that again next week. Like I say, I've watched some of RoboCop 2, and, you know, the completely fucked up attempts to sort of recreate the RoboCop program we'll talk about next week. But some of that's really comedic in a kind of nihilistic way.
Yep.
But for all we've just been talking, this film is really tight because it's immediately... We've got this other program to go. We just need a candidate, basically, and it cuts straight back to Murphy.
Yeah.
And they take a call immediately to some crime scene.
Yeah, sort of. You see him. He's there outside with
Lewis,
and he's flipping the gun because like his son watches like the show.
Spin a
TJ.
gun array. It's the cowboy.
Is it meant to be like
thing.
TJ Hooker or something?
Yeah.
Like
Well,
TJ Laser.
It's the cowboy thing.
TJ
about-
Hooker, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a base.
That's
Yeah,
the one.
it is based on TJ Hooker, obviously, which again is a little bit of satire, but it's the idea of like in the old west, spinning the gun around and sticking it in your holster.
Yeah,
It's
but
the
it very
same-
much does remind you of those old kind of Western kind of tropes. And there's obviously TJ Hooker, you've got another Star Trek reference there as well. One of my fun facts combines all these Trek and Batman.
And the general lawlessness of the area is very old west as well, just obviously
Yeah.
a lot higher tech.
Very much like this old the sheriff, isn't he, kind of hired to sort it all out.
Yeah, so they've got to go. They get after a gang basically that have just pulled some stunt, and it's Clarence Boddinger's gang. I always struggle with the name of most of his team. I always remember Emil for obvious reasons. I mean, I've got the names in front of me here, but obviously he's got his gang with him. They've just committed an armed robbery. Starts with a little bit of like, they've burnt the money. That's quite funny. The fact you burnt the fucking money.
Well, it's always like sort of like the multiracial gang. I mean, obviously, like you got a collection of white dudes who get killed off first. Like, do you know what I mean? So you got like sort of you have like the Hispanic dude. You got like the guy in a leather jacket.
Asian
You got a
dude.
black dude. You got the Asian dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's almost like different themes, but anyway, so. Yeah,
And all I remember thinking is Paul Verhoeven's not really an action director, not at this stage of his career, and actually this is all shot pretty well as a little car chase.
Yeah, he's sort of he's driving and he's like sort of showing a bit of nuance by coming up at them from the side, surprising them. But they throw the body on the roof of the car.
One of them's got a shot in the legs. It's, can you fly? Yeah. But they end up following them to like a disused mill or something, which is very much in the iconography of this film. Just disused, run-down areas. Lewis catches up on one of them having a piss, basically. And is basically distracted by his penis.
Yeah.
There's a close-up on her face, and it's like, I was willing her, I was like, don't look down there, don't look down there, and she does, and they... Oh.
I nearly get the quote wrong, because I always slip into like... Do
you mind if I zip up?
But yeah, mind if I whip this out? That's some Blazing Saddles.
I think we have to do Mel Brooks some point on the show.
Sure.
I'd love to cover his films.
Okay. I think Mel Brooks at his best is amazing, but he did an awful lot of films that aren't.
We can maybe do pick and choose.
Yeah,
Dracula Dead and Loving It.
was that him?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that was a Mel Brooks film.
I thought that was quite funny.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bit cringy,
That
but
and Robin Hood Men in Tights. That was
yes,
like,
another great one. And High Anxiety too.
Got an admission. I haven't seen Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh my god, so funny. You gotta check it out.
All right. I know it's based on the iconography of the Douglas Fairbanks one.
It's really dumb, but it's
But Carrie
Tom's
Hills is in
alright.
it, and he's absolutely hilarious. He's sends up the kind of like Douglas Fairbanks kind of role,
Okay.
and her being like pretty boy.
So basically, Murphy goes in and sort of thinks he's captured the gang. They're all sat in there.
he shoots one. He shoots like
one.
and then captures one of them.
Yeah, and then Bodiger ends up being right behind him. And Lewis is sort of knocked out by the other guy.
Yeah.
Not by his penis, but yeah, and to cut a very long story short here, we get a little bit of monologuing from him, buddy, I think you're slime and all that sort of thing, but by and large he's just shot to pieces here, isn't he? That's the whole point of this scene. He's absolutely shot to pieces.
It is quite painful because it's just like Bones is basically sort of playing with his food almost. It's like he's got him and he's just
exactly
like
what it is. Even before he blows his hand off, it's like
yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, his hand's blown off, and then he's just absolutely shot to pieces, finished by a bullet to the head.
Yeah.
And by the time it finishes, Lewis has recovered and sort of is watching it through like a little gateway. They get away, and obviously it's immediately straight to him sort of being helicoptered into hospital. And the funny thing is, the bit I found, I can't remember if the hand being blown off was in the version I saw first. I think it might have been. I wouldn't even be surprised if we only had the uncut version over here, because we're a little bit more liberal on that stuff than the United States, and we were in this era. I know we got a harder cut of Die Hard and things like that than you got in that country.
I'm not entirely sure because obviously the first version I saw was cut to shit anyway.
I've got a feeling I saw his hand shot off the first time. The bit that actually I found hardest to watch was him on the table, because you saw his eyes all vacant, and then the camera kept going up and down his torso, which is shot to shit as they're trying to revive him or save him, basically. And obviously that's a very visceral sort of 2-minute scene, which ends in them having to call it, and he's dead. And you see it from his perspective. And then the next thing you see, we just go through the montage of him being turned into RoboCop, basically, from his perspective.
And we get sort of seeing that scientists play for him is like, should we keep the arm? No, lose the arm. Yeah.
And you see him sort of Morton shaking hands with like the prosthetic that's going to go on, and it's like all the robotics. And it's like 400 foot-pounds that'll crush every bone in your hand. And it's like, we're going to wipe his memory anyway. And it's like, I think they say then, can we do that? And it's like, he signed the release forms.
Yeah.
He's our property, which is coming back to that sort of thing.
Yeah, he's clinically dead.
He signed the release forms. We can do what the hell we like with him.
Which, well, it doesn't get really sort of discussed, but why use a corpse, though? What's the purpose of using... What's the idea?
Consent, he doesn't have to give consent, does he then?
No, but
I found that really problematic. I was
why is he not completely human then? Like, so why is he not just completely robot?
Are you saying why don't they use a robot, or why don't they use someone who's been paralysed?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I was just trying to think of like the film never addresses. Yeah, what's the thing with using somebody that used to be a person, and to just having someone that was purely a robot? I
think the clue is in the fact that they, firstly, they tried a robot with Ed 209. So I think they want the base personality of a person, and it's answered by the fact they're sending their best cops to hellholes. Yeah. They want the best they have to offer. They don't want that guy's memories. They don't want that guy's emotions. They want that guy's base abilities and sense of right and wrong. So they wouldn't want a bent cop. We addressed that in the second one when they do try to use a criminal. Do you know what I mean? You if you use a bad guy, all you do is amplify the bad. Same principle as.
We'll see next week, but
it's a silly link, but the only link I can think of, it's the same principle as the Red Skull. You give him the serum, and that amplifies the bad. You give Steve the serum, and you make a good man better. I think that's the same. I think that's what that is. I mean, you're right in some respects, because if you haven't got his memories, what is he basing his actions on? I dare say doctorate papers have been written on this.
Yeah, I mean,
You'll be surprised.
To be fair, this is like the one thing that the remake did actually address. They come down to the idea of the fact that the public responds better to when they can actually see a guy in there, even though it's basically so that sort of thing is addressed almost.
But that's almost more a sort of that makes it more almost a marketing decision. Whereas it's not here. I think it's logistics. We've started off with a robotic option that it didn't work.
Yeah.
And it's arse about face because the second one's written later. But again, the second one, they went a different way, and that didn't work either. Retrofitting that you need someone relatively pure in motive.
Okay.
And experienced and everything else. Which makes you wonder what wiping the memory would do.
Yeah.
But then we don't know how surgical the removal of memory is. In the it doesn't work that well in this film. But also, when somebody's an amnesiac in life, they still tend to know how to walk, talk, and do everything else. And any skills they have, I dare say, like an amnesiac who was a really good pianist could still do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same principle. His base abilities remain. And that would include all the training he went through.
Yes, but his skill. You keep his skills, his reflexes, and but you take away his memories.
Anything that could cause dissent.
Yes,
that's what it is.
Okay, I get you now.
It's a guess. But
yeah, yeah. So we get all that. We get it's New Year when we get like the unveiling where he's like off there walking in front. It's all done from his perspective as well.
Yeah, it is. Them putting the LED grid over his eyes and that sort of thing. Yeah, the targeting, the recording, everything.
Mm.
He's even covered in like plastic at one point. He's under like a sheet. So all of that, and then the first reveal is him walking through the precinct, isn't it?
Mm. You kind of get to see a little bit. You got the gun range and the. You just see this like massive gun just like blasting the target, like the paper target away.
I don't know if that's deliberately a bit dirty Harry in iconography, just having a ludicrously big gun.
I think it is meant to be a little bit, isn't it?
I think it was almost when they were talking about what gun they should use or what will make up what gun, was like it had something that matches him. So obviously with someone like.
In a big suit.
You're
really
going to need
really
a bigger gun to kind of...
You can't really give him a Beretta, can you?
You can't give him just like a Wolfer PPK, can you?
Ladies' gun? Nice and light in a lady's handbag.
Then you see him put it in his handbag and head out of the precinct.
Also, I'm not saying it's a lady's gun, it's a quote from the film.
It's a quote from the film, absolutely.
Nice and light in a lady's handbag.
We don't think you're sexist against women, Becca.
But, being one myself.
Yes.
I don't like to embroider kittens, would that suffice?
Yeah. The other thing I love is the desk sergeant complains because it's like, well, it's my precinct, and it's like, you know.
Yeah, it's like he basically tells to fuck off, basically.
Yeah. Bob Morton is very much an anti-hero in this film. We don't want what happens to him to happen, but his behaviour, full stop, through the film is just not good.
No, I mean he seems to be like
he's less bad than Dick Jones. That's all.
Yeah.
But
his character was changed, wasn't he? Like, he was kind of like a thoroughly unpleasant individual, but then they toned him down to become more amiable, I guess.
Aside from the fact, well, yeah, absolutely, but also quite aside from the fact that cops are dying, no wonder they'd want to strike on the basis that, you know, a guy who's basically an executive, they've only just got the police contract. They've got the police contract in return for something to do with this new Delta City being built, which is going to ghettoise the city even further because they're only going to redevelop parts of Detroit. Bits of it are going to be left to rot. But, you know, it's a bit like a politician walking in and telling like a doctor how to do an operation. It's a total disregard for the professional skills that's in that precinct. Yeah. I have concerns. Fuck you, we own you.
Well, yeah. I mean, even from a basic level, he needs to know what the fuck's happening. Like,
It's his
like,
precinct. He would do the staffing as much as anything else.
It's like, what is this thing? What do I need to, yeah, and it's, yeah, of
And
course.
it's
So
give him his car. That's it.
yeah. There also is like a mention of like, oh, what they bringing these things into places. And that got me thinking, like, well, probably that probably would be the guy. And wouldn't that be a fucking insult? Oh yeah, we'll just like reuse your dead cops to replace.
It's the precinct he died in. You think they
Yeah.
put him in a different one?
Well, true. You think about it as a concept, it is a bit of a fucking insult and kind of fucked up, really. It's like you're using cops who died on the beat and reanimate them as a robot to police the streets again. To replace the cops that are...
Absolutely. Although, of course, they don't know it's Murphy at this point.
Yeah.
The top half of his face is covered by the sort of helmet, the mask. His memory's been wiped. He doesn't even know he's Murphy at this point himself. Yeah. The giveaway is actually all in the seeding around the TJ laser, the swinging of the gun.
Yeah,
because he does that.
Lois spots that. That's the first thing that sort of that goes, oh, hang on, that's...
Yeah. So all very, very nicely scripted and very tight. We're not that far into the film at this point. And, of course, we get the sort of Superman's first flight scene now, you know what I mean? First night out on the beat.
Yeah.
And this is all pretty cool. Just a bunch of little vignettes to tell us what he's doing and what the city's like as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the rape scene is horrible. I mean, you don't see anything graphic. But
well, it's a tempted one, isn't it? It's like
that's also another moment in which I had to look away.
Yeah, I mean, I can sort of understand that. You don't see very much, but I think also in this era, and certainly through the 90s, villains in these types of films would always find everything hysterical. It's just a funny tick that's not there as much these days.
No, they just sort of laugh at everything like jackals, basically.
Yeah.
Like hyenas, even.
But it's just this horrible, disused part of the city, not watched, not properly planned. I mean, when you plan a city now, you plan it to have as few hidden areas as possible for things like graffiti and crime.
Everything's out in the open. Yeah,
which is why you only get sort of graffiti in underpasses and areas people never go.
And do you notice the shot as well? Like, you know what, when he saves the girl.
Oh yeah, I think that's a really cleverly placed shot.
Because you see it's up a shot. You see like the banner in full at the top.
Like, what? Sorry.
Because like, you know, when he saves the girl, and she's like, "Oh, thank you," and he's very much like, in a robot mind, you've been in a traumatic incident. I will notify the rape center.
Rape crisis center.
But it's shot up. You actually sort of see like the full banner of the future city in work. You know,
that's right. Yes,
City of the Future with the silver lining.
So yeah, this will go away, but it probably won't go away for people like you.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of there's a hint of irony there, isn't it? I think.
It is the looking after the haves, not the have-nots. That's the social commentary of this film, really.
Yeah.
The other thing I noticed with the shot is just the positioning of where it is, without being too graphic. The shape and positioning of male genitalia. He's not shot him in the balls. He shot his dick off, basically.
Yeah.
So
it's a really well placed shot.
It's a really well placed shot. Then he goes and I can't remember. It's some office, isn't it? Next, where some guy's holding people hostage. I think he's either just been fired or voted out.
He's actually like he's full of said it because he's basically sort of, I want to recount. So I think he was running for mayor.
He's an elected official who's lost.
Yeah, and so he was like, she's just got absolutely fucking mad. So he was like, that I want to recount, and no matter what the result, I want my old job back.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just like, you know, the guy is just like completely lost it because he's on about like, oh, I want a car that does really shitty mileage or whatever.
It's really shitty gas mileage.
It's like, what?
In other words, get me something fast and fucking impressive. That's all I care about. So that's really cool. He gets him through a wall. As I say, when he pushes him out the window to save everyone, because he's about to kill one of the hostages.
Yeah, I think the mayor as well.
When he pushes him out the window, the camera scans him right down to being landed.
Yeah.
I mean the in-film camera, the news crews, not the film camera.
Yeah.
which is again the voyeurism of this world and not understanding the difference between real life and entertainment, or using real life as entertainment in the most hideous way.
Yeah, you sort of so you see the legs just sort of like kick up as it's like as you can imagine the body lands.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that apart from a robbery, which is your standard. Like he ends up like causing more damage than anything else. But
The guy's dialogue, and there's nothing subtle about that, but his dialogue is "fuck me" repeatedly. Fuck me.
And that was ad-libbed as well, so they just weren't like, yeah, okay, great.
Perfect. Well, what else would you say?
Yeah. You just go, oh shit.
Yeah. So yeah, this is several months on as well. It did take them several months. You go through Christmas and New Year and all the rest of it. So the whole building of the RoboCop thing took some time. The other thing we've missed out on saying is that this is a much simplified being, in that he basically eats baby food, and when he's off duty, he sits in a chair. And he's monitored on screens and through being hooked up to what looks a bit like a lie detector test, but it's just there to check bodily
Check vital signs.
Emotions
impulses.
and things like that.
That sort of thing, yeah.
So we get more, news. For I say, go straight to that. We get to see.
Is this the strike bit?
I've written my notes as dick in the toilet. This is like the scene with like.
Well, the news article will have been about them going on strike, and you've got different members of the public. Just in real life now, you get people who don't see their point, people who do see their point, and you hear both of those. They're not supposed to strike, and then you get somebody else who's like, it should do what they want.
Yeah, you got the guy saying the cops are not supposed to strike, and you got like the crazy unemployed guy who's like, woo.
Yeah.
Crazy
Which
world.
makes you immediately think, what is the perspective of this film?
Yeah.
Because the person who shows sympathy is fucking wacko. You know what I mean? So the film continually throws you little curveballs like that. A bit like with Bob Morton. Bob Morton's an asshole, but you're meant to be more on his side than Dick's. Largely because he created RoboCop, who's the hero of the film.
And he's less of a dick than. Yeah, I mean, you could argue his intentions are more of, he's just a bellend about it, because he is literally making a product that works.
Yeah.
That does it,
Yeah, no, he is. And he's really rubbing it in, because the next thing you do see is, dick in the toilet. You have, but it reminded me of The Simpsons when Homer got, access to the executive washroom. Because it's like that. He's got access to the executive toilet.
Yeah, he's got the key card.
He's just been effectively promoted off the back of this. Which is why he's so clumsy in there, because he doesn't know who's in there or when they tend to go in or whatever.
No, what's going on?
Yeah, so he's in there calling Dick an arsehole and stuff like that.
And
in one of the stalls.
You see, and the other guy sort of literally just goes in pissing his pants. The
guy he's shown zipping up to walk out, and he's still
mid flow. He's
it's like, get out of here, and he's left there. Morton tries to style it out though, doesn't he?
Yeah, he goes okay, well, this is awkward, but okay. And he gives him the warning, really, don't fuck with me.
Yeah. So I think we cut to a little bit later now. We got RoboCop in the chair, and he's starting to see things, and it is coming up on the screen.
Yeah.
He's having most of his memories are of being shot, aren't they?
Yeah.
Most of it, Clarence shooting at him and things like that. So he's remembering something. And before they take a long time to spot it, because they're just chatting, those who are monitoring it. Like any time you're on some sort of night shift or security shift, you're supposed to be watching the screens, but you can't literally look at a screen 60 seconds in every minute.
Yeah.
So they take a little while to figure it out. By the time they figure it out, he's on the move.
And he runs into Lois, who he takes the opportunity to sort of think, hang on, I think this is Murphy. And so she could, and he
she calls him Murphy.
And he just sort of, he almost takes note of it and just carries on walking.
Yeah, and then she gets a bit reprimanded for that.
Yeah.
And then I think we cut to a meal at the gas station.
Yes, because he's kind of because he goes on, he basically just goes on a big hunt, doesn't he? and he's doing what he's doing at a gas station, sort of threatening the clerk, and
Really bookish type who's reading a book on like physics or something.
yeah,
He's obviously like working there part time with like study.
yeah,
Yeah. And he's like just enjoying threatening him, really, talking about shooting him and all that sort of thing. And RoboCop turns up to sort of stop it. What is it that gives this away that Emil says? Oh, it's dead or alive,
Yeah.
you're coming with me, isn't
Dead or
it?
alive,
Yeah.
coming with me. That's a
Which
sort
is
of his line.
Murphy said that to him in the warehouse at the start of the
Yeah.
film.
Mhm.
So he's like, "We killed you," and of
It's like,
course,
we killed you. And he
it's
kind
been
of plays it back.
established. It's been established. RoboCop's recording at all times.
yeah. So he stalls at that. And he's like thinking, "What do you mean? We killed you?" And he sort of plays that. So yeah, have a bit. He shoots him. Tries to drive off, but he ends up like sort of shooting him out and captures him basically. And where do we go? Because of that, he kind of like
He goes back into records now.
yeah.
And again, film is, I wouldn't say, it's not quite Back to the Future in terms of everything being set up and pay off, but there's a lot of that, and the spike is set up here, which you don't realise till late in the film, but he's basically got a spike that comes out of his fist,
Yeah.
Wolverine style, and it's a data reader. So he basically walks into records, punches his hand into a computer terminal, and basically calls up a match on Emil and all known associates.
Yeah. So
And it brings up who they're
yeah.
responsible for killing, and it brings up an image of Murphy, which is a name that's just been given to him. So he realizes that's him, and it also gives him last known address for Murphy. Might be the most affecting scene of the film, with a wonderful bit of scoring by Basil Polidaris. If you want to look it up, folks, go to wherever you get music from and look up the track that's called Home or Going Home or something like that. Beautiful, evocative. Mind you, the scene itself is on YouTube, so if you just type in RoboCop Home, you'll probably find the actual scene. It goes back to the house, it isn't 120 Sycamore, but for argument's sake, that's the address. He goes to that, finds the street, walks into the house, which is basically being sold by like automated screens with estate agents. Welcome to your new home and all that sort of thing. And he's wandering around it, having flashbacks of his life there with this wonderful, evocative music. It's the most effective scene in the film.
And it's just like the only real time you see his family.
Yeah, they're not. That's one thing about the remake. They establish the family, don't they? First.
Now that's usually like a standard thing. Usually you have a scene with the family, or you have a bit of a group. But here, like
Playing baseball with
we
the
introduce Murphy when we get told what we need to know. It's like, well,
We see a lot of them through flashback, don't we? Pretty much.
And I think it's actually a lot more effective for here. We don't really need to have like the wife as another character, but here it's more effective because it does play more as memory. I
think if I'm remembering correctly, it's Abby Cornish in the remake, and they make her a much more major character.
Yeah.
I've only seen that film once. I saw it in the cinema and I haven't seen it since. And I didn't hate it. On review, I might hate it. It's nowhere near this quality. And it's barely good, but it's serviceable, as I recall. And when we come to talk about that film, I'll be talking much more about the state of MGM around the turn of the decade, which is another thing that'll have a Bond link.
Yeah.
But that film is a response to what that studio needed to do at that stage, and it didn't really work. But Abby Cornish is a major character in that film because they try to carry on a life somehow. It's a very different film. This film is a lot colder in that regard.
But it works a bit better because it comes across as a memory, and it's like and you were kind of like going through
and
an
an incomplete memory.
Yeah,
we don't even know what she's called, do we?
I don't think so.
You never get that she's like Jeanette Murphy, do you?
No, or something.
I don't think you do. I don't think you do, and that works better because he doesn't know. We know as much as he knows.
He's pretty. He's like finding sort of bits like obviously like there's some things left behind. Something
broken. There's a broken cup there.
Yeah.
And things like that. I mean, the thing that occurs to me is you have to set up. The only bit of family chat we get is the TJ Laser thing, the spin of the gun. But you got to explain why he does that, because otherwise he'd be a dickhead. If he was a cop that just went on duty and every time he shot someone he went, spun the gun. And, you know,
Yeah. No, but it's quite simple. It's like, oh, hey, Dad, could you do that?
Yeah, but that was the only bit that was set up before
Yeah.
the flashback. We knew he did it to impress his son. That's the only
Yeah.
bit.
And so you have sort of shots of the family and things like that. Yeah, it's quite.
And his wife walking up to him in a robe in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Nothing sexual, but loving and family.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a wonderful scene. What did you guys make of it? Well, I think, Chris, you've said.
Yeah.
What did you make of the scene, Becca?
Yeah, no, I would agree. All of the above, quite frankly. Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you guys. So
Beautiful piece of music as well.
yeah, the score. I just calling back to sort of Conan as well. I think he's very much Paul Verhoeven is very much a composer like all of his own. He sort of instantly his music is really, I don't know if you can call it iconic. It's one of those kind of scores that is instantly recognisable. It's from that film. It's from that film.
I think it's one of Charlie's favourite. I know it's one of Charlie's favourite scores.
Yeah, I was sort of chomping at the bit, thinking, oh yeah, Charlie's going to come on. Oh, not yet. I had to hold myself back, and because I know it's one of his favourites. That he loves to kind of rhapsodical about.
Just for anyone not familiar, I'm not going to name his entire filmography because there's like with all composers, there's a mix of good and bad because they just turn up and do projects. But he did both Conan films, or both the Arnie Conan films. He did Iron Eagle. He did Flesh and Blood, which is Verhoeven's first English language film. He did The Hunt for Red October. He did Quigley Down Under, which Chris mentioned during the Mission Impossible 2 commentary. He did White Fang, which is a really cool film. He did what else did he do? Just run through it. He did Starship Troopers. That's the sort of major things. There's obviously a lot more on there than that, but it's probably his Conan score he's best known for. But he didn't do. Looking at it, it looks like he did part 3 of this series, but he didn't do part 2. But that could have been a clash with The Hunt for Red October. Looking at it, so we've got everything we need to know now. He knows who the gang is. He knows who he is. We know Bob Morton is in serious trouble.
He's starting to get more emotion as well.
Yeah.
And didn't he go straight to?
We cut to Bob Morton, and this is what I mean about almost like an anti-hero angle. In that Bob Morton is with 2, I don't know if they're hookers or just
models,
girlfriends, but 2 relatively disposable people.
Just a couple of girls.
Yeah, he's snorting cocaine off one of their tits, sort of thing.
Yeah, standard Wall Street kind of stuff, really, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's getting a little bit like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And basically
doorbell goes, and it's Clarence Bodiger.
Lo and behold.
And I love his line. He just comes out and says like, "Bitches leave."
Yeah.
Doesn't say get out or like or say
Leave.
or say you bitches get out of here. He said literally bitches leave.
Yeah. Absolutely outstanding. And of course, what we didn't know before this
call
scene,
me.
I mean, the clue is obviously Morton has pissed off Dick Jones. So this guy turning up to hurt him, you would immediately think he's linked to Dick Jones, but we did not know that link before this scene.
Yeah.
And Morton's already been said to him, we've got all these contracts in place for Delta City. So, and who cares if it works? So we already know Dick's attitude. But yeah, basically, he shoots him several times and sets off a grenade.
Yeah.
So that's Bob Morton dead. The scene's quite effective because Bob Morton is desperately trying to save his own life and desperately trying to stop him shooting him more, and then tries to stop the grenade. But that's it. And then I think the next scene we see is is it a cocaine factory or what?
Yeah. Well, we get the other guy gets arrested in the club, doesn't he? By RoboCop.
Yes.
And then we have like the cocaine factory. Yeah.
RoboCop walks in basically.
Yeah. He's like doing a deal. He's like guns, 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 guns.
Yeah.
And he walks in just sort of you have your big massive shootout.
He doesn't kill Clarence here. He throws him through like glass plate windows and things like that. And in desperation, he reveals he's connected to someone high up in OCP, and then gives him the name.
Yeah.
Dick Jones's. Yeah. And that's it. So he can't. And at some point that just sort of stops him. He just goes straight after.
He takes him to the police station.
Yeah, where he spits quite a lot in this film. This guy spits blood right on the papers to book him in.
It's pretty gross.
Just give me a fucking phone call.
Yeah, the officers again. Every line he delivers deliciously. It's just brilliant.
He's great, isn't he? He's a really memorable character, definitely.
But none of the dialogue's that amazing. It's just so well delivered.
He's just got that right scumbaggy look, hasn't he?
Yeah. He orders him. He's a cop killer.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then RoboCop goes straight to Dick Jones' office, and Dick Jones, he looks really like he's just waiting. He knows it's coming.
Yeah.
Now, one thing we forgot to mention is at the start of the film, he's asked what his prime directives are. And I can't remember the three, but it's protect the innocent, uphold the law. There's three of them.
And something else. And then there's Directive 4.
But we don't know there's a Directive 4 until this point. There's not.
No.
It doesn't say. I always remembered it as saying 4 classified. And it doesn't. When I watch the film again, that you do not know there's a Directive 4. Until he goes into basically, he's saying, well, he shows him the footage of him saying it's Dick Jones, and then he says, oh, these are very serious charges. And when he goes to arrest him, he starts like spasming.
Yeah.
RoboCop starts spasming, and then he says, little insurance plan I put in. You cannot, is it arrest a senior executive of OCP?
Yeah, that's the one.
Which is, again, the attitude of this film. It's very... a senior member of OCP. He's literally protecting himself. He could, middle managers, he probably could. It's all about the haves and have-nots, this film.
Yeah, it's a very clear dividing line, isn't it?
And then he said Z209 after him. And basically, he was saying how useless Z209 is. Z209 can't go downstairs.
It's like the Daleks.
It's like the Daleks. It's exactly that. He can't go down the stairs, and that's how he gets away.
They can now because they can fly.
It's definitely a ground floor weapon, really. So why the fuck would you have that in your building?
Yeah, it's a city that has so many high-rise buildings.
Absolutely. So Dick has, when you think about it, Dick's built a substandard product here.
Yeah.
A vicious one, but substandard. So all of that sort of stuff occurs to you as you think about the film.
As it turns out, though, that's it's not really his agenda, though. At the end of the day, is it?
His agenda is not law enforcement.
No, he's a lot more about playing the game to suit his needs.
Yeah,
actually.
And the whole Clarence Boddicker link is to control parts of the city and also just get in on things like prostitution and stuff like that.
And also run certain areas to the ground so he can benefit from. Basically.
Yeah, because it's the same principle as. It's almost permanent war. It's it's almost that 1984 thing of if you make the citizens permanently frightened, you can control them. So there's just so much in this film. So the whole police force are after RoboCop now, so he takes a lot of damage, but he basically gets away. I just think physically this is really well acted. I'm assuming this is mainly Weller in the suit because there aren't any major stunts, but he is falling off platforms and rolling under things and just barely getting away, and Lewis gets him away.
Yeah, just managed to get there in time. I mean, we do get a little bit of hey, he's like one of us, like he's a cop. We shouldn't be doing this. From some police officers, but
but again, that's like any act of atrocity in this world. I was only following orders is no defense. We see that with Nazi war crimes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So all of those things you can miss, and the film still works. But all those layers are there to think about if you want to.
Yeah, they're definitely there. But there also is there'll be something. Well, he's just a machine. They'll probably get against the idea anyway.
But again, back to that Star Trek. What constitutes a sentient life?
Indeed.
We have a sort of biochemical. We're biochemical machinery. You know what I mean? So, so where do we go from there?
So we go.
Doesn't
back
Dick
to...
seriously? Dick goes in to. Doesn't Dick go in to see?
No,
see
it's
him?
Clarence goes in to see Dick.
Sorry, that's what I meant. I meant that way round.
Yeah.
It goes in with his face a little
Which
bit.
he flirts with the receptionist, which is
Creepily as hell.
is actually his wife in real life.
Is that Kurtwood Smith's wife?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome! I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's a fun fact.
Ah, fun fact.
I'm going to look that up now because there must be a bit about Kurtwood's private life here somewhere, personal life. Married. Yeah, Joan Perkle, who agreed. Yeah, cool. Second marriage, they're still together. That's awesome.
Aw.
Cool. All right. So
yeah.
he's basically saying, "You said my name, Dick." Kurt, and he says,
Yeah.
"Well, look at my not Dick, Clarence," and it's like, "Look at my fucking face."
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also like the contradiction in terms that he's chastising Clarence for like he records you have to watch what you say even though he's
just done it.
He's done it himself.
We don't really know that. We don't see. Well, we do know it if you stop to think about it.
Yeah.
Because he records everything, but at the same time, we saw the recording word on when he was recording a meal, so you might think A, he's not recording everything. He might record when he chooses to record. And B, the film's moving along so quickly. For a film of this era, it wouldn't even occur.
Well, I mean, he probably plans to actually have RoboCop be killed by now anyway.
But he was about to shut down, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay. So, and then we get a bit of conversation between the two, and it is like, drugs, prostitution, and all those sorts of conversations. So the link between them is properly explored in a very short scene.
Mm.
And I think RoboCop is. Oh, and he starts. He says, "I need you to kill him," and he says, "Well, we need military grade firepower," and he says, "We practically are the military."
Yeah. Which also got me thinking, like, surely, like, if they were like if a company like this owned the police, surely the first thing would be, like, kick them out of all the new fancy, weaponry and protective gear. Surely.
Yeah, but it's what's a life work. Think of like Batman Begins, where you've got like that equipment they could have like put on soldiers, but it's $300,000 a pop, and a soldier's life ain't worth that.
Yeah, it's true. True. There's all those elements. Plus, also, obviously, it's like obviously run by Dick anyway, so he's like, he's not going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. But actually, there are questions about Dick's competence through all of this, and actually, that's one thing Bob Morton had. He actually did the job properly, more or less.
Yeah.
I mean, RoboCop did have memory issues, but he is a prototype. So, all that's really cool. So I think we now cross-cut between them being armed and pissing around with these new sort of weapons and blowing each other's cars up. At the same time, we see Emil watching that footage of that guy. I'd buy that for $1. We've not mentioned that, have we? That made me think
Bixby, whatever his name is.
Reminded me of Idiocracy. So when you look at a film, Idiocracy is a Luke Wilson film. I don't know if you guys listening have ever
I've heard of it, but I don't think I've seen it.
Made by I forgot his name. Mike Judge, I think it is. He did Beavis and Butthead.
Right.
But he also did a film called Office Space, which I'd recommend.
I've seen that.
Office
That's a
Space
classic.
is very well known, although I didn't see it. I probably only saw that 8 or 9 years ago. I didn't see it for like maybe the first 10 years of its life, because it's a 99 film, I think.
Yeah.
99 was a great year for film.
Yes, I did. I got to that at uni.
But fun enough, 99 is a year where a lot of films were centered around like the idea of being in an office and want to escape that mundane.
Yeah,
you think about Fight Club, Matrix, Office Space.
Yeah, all that kind of thing. Want to escape to another world.
Other film, American Beauty.
It's pre 9/11. In an absence of that global threat, your biggest worry in life is you're bored at work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like
losing your soul
to the mundane of your job, isn't it?
Post 9/11, that wasn't people's like big worries,
Yeah.
to be honest. But
the millennium on the horizon as well. So you kind of look into new worlds, other possibilities,
also
looking to escape the everyday.
Yeah, absolutely. The central plot of Office Space is the same scheme that Richard Pryor was doing in Superman 3.
Yes.
They're taking the bits of money left over on salary. Yeah, so it's the exact same plot. But Idiocracy...
and they reference it as well.
Yeah, they do.
Idiocracy is about the dumbing down of society. So Luke Wilson finds himself 500 years in the future for reasons that it's not that important to go into. And, like, the president is a dumb ex-wrestler and stuff like that. And the Oscar-winning film that year is, like, 3 hours of an arsehole farting.
Oh, God.
Like, It's just, and buildings. The start of the film basically is pointing out that, like, there's no PC way to put this. Dumber people breed faster. So, like, dumb hick families are having 12 kids, while professionals keep putting off having kids. And by the time they try to do it, one of them dies or something. So 500 years in the future, the gene pool's weaker. So buildings are having to be held up by, like, ropes and shit. They can't even build properly. And the entertainment is dumbed down. And I think that is the comment of this in this society. Their news is, like, cheesy. And
adverts are really bad.
And their entertainment is dumb and a bit base.
Oh boy,
it's
for a dollar.
It's a dumb guy trying to get laid and just coming out with the same catchphrase.
Isn't it
It's
meant to
like
be?
Bart Simpson's
I read somewhere it's
I
meant to
Didn't
be
Do
kind of like well, kind of obviously satire on like Benny Hill, those kind of shows.
Could be.
Even though it's of a different era.
It could be. I've not really thought about that, to be honest. But it is definitely, this character has nothing but base desires and a catchphrase. That's
cheesy
it.
catchphrase.
So it's basically trying to show us this society is dumbed down a little. I think.
Yeah.
I would probably say the same, yeah.
I mean, it might be also a reflection on, like, TV in general, because you could probably make that same sort of comment like now. Like, you know, especially with, like, Love Island or what.
We're ahead of the curve.
Oh,
We're
God.
ahead of the curve on this stuff. You know, you think the first series of Big Brother was about 11 years after this.
Yeah.
Not 30 years after this or 40 years after this.
But it's always, like, the lowest common denominator, like, entertainment that tends to sort of be, like, really popular.
Keep the population scared and uninformed.
Yeah.
So again, when cops die, instead of presenting it as this horror, yes, the public are scared, but they're scared of crime. They're not scared of world events. You're keeping them in the dark. You're playing that off as quite light. So all of that stuff's quite interesting, and it also intercuts with. I don't know if they're at the same place he was shot at, but they're basically at this disused mill again.
Yeah.
And he's fixing himself, and he does take his mask off at this point.
You don't like.
Which is
You won't like
actually-
what you're about to see. What?
Isn't this makeup superb?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Can't see
It's
the
really
joy.
incredible.
In
Today
this
that would be
era-
all CG.
In this era where you had to have part of people's face missing or a big wound, you had to build it out, so he's looked a bit bulky, and you could always see the join. I can't hear.
No, I can't.
This is years ahead of its time in makeup. But then an awful lot of the budget for this film is around the look of that character. So, yeah, he can't target and things like that, so she's having to manually do it so he can lock that on and sort of rebuild his auto
Readjust.
Yeah.
And then the baddies show up.
Yeah, he does say before that he says, I feel them, but I can't remember them talking about his family. So his memories don't link to anything. Those images he saw in the home are all he knows. He didn't see that and extrapolate it out to anything.
Yeah.
I can feel them, but I can't.
There wasn't an extension of anything that was like...
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. So, yeah, the bad guys turn up. And again, this film's really tight. We're straight into, like, the final sort of action sequence, really. When I watched this film, I thought of Becca 2 or 3 times. Is it fair to say, Becca, you're all right with violence? It's gore you're not good with, isn't it?
That sounds a bit dodge. Don't really know.
That's fair. Because I mean, I don't want to like coddle you too much. You're all right with violence in films, but it's gore.
I can tolerate it up to a certain point. Yeah, it's just like if it's overly gory and limbs being lopped off left, right, and centre, and this is probably about my threshold.
It's quite a high threshold. This is a pretty violent film.
That's about as high as I go, unfortunately. I'm not really a big fan of like body horror and stuff like that. I appreciate, it's a lot of the style and obviously the technical innovations in terms of like makeup and effects that have come along with it. Definitely, really huge respect for that kind of stuff.
I have to
but
admit,
I just can't stomach it.
I saw RoboCop when it was a fairly new film. I have a feeling, this is a bit of a guess, but I remember going to a birthday party when I think it was someone's 13th, may have been their 12th. I'm sure it was 1989 or 90, one of the two. But there were only about 5 of us, and he had fairly indulgent parents, not neglectful, but with the small group. If there'd been 30 of us there, we wouldn't have watched RoboCop. But because there were 5 of us and we were known to the parents, it was like, yeah, you can watch it.
It's fine.
So we watched RoboCop. And the only bit as a 12, 13-year-old that I was a little bit, oh, Christ, that was the toxic waste scene. And that's the only time I ever felt like that. Every time I watch it now, I just think, fuck me, that's genius.
Yeah, the makeup and effects are incredible. It's horrifying.
Yeah, Emil drives into
because
some
the effects are so good.
It's just a bit. It does feel a little bit like OTT and a bit
It's
unnecessary.
It's meant to be, though.
OTT.
Definitely meant to be.
Like, you know, it did not need to be as drawn out as it
Let's
is.
just set the scene very quickly and then talk about it, Chris. In the midst of this battle, Emil loses control of this van and drives into a vat of toxic waste, side on into it. He pierces the side of it, and it flushes through the van completely, flushes him out the back. Next thing you see, he stands up and his flesh is melting off him. The first thing you notice is when you watch it the first time is the face, because that's grotesque. But when you watch it on subsequent viewings, it's actually the hands that are the most impressive.
Yeah.
Because it looks like the flesh is coming off the bone, and you think, I don't know how they've done that. It's incredible. So he's melting, basically, isn't he?
It is literally melting.
Anything else we want to say about this action sequence?
It's well, that bit. I just think it's I think it's a gag that just sort of like just goes on a bit too long. It's just a little bit too outstretched.
He's stumbling along for only a few seconds, but it in your head it plays like it's minutes long.
Yeah, because it cuts back to someone else, and it's like they're chasing. He goes to like one of the other guys. He's helped me. He's like, oh no.
And then he's pushed out the way. Don't touch me. And he's pushed out the way in front of like he gets hit by.
That's quite an iconic scene as well. Don't touch me, isn't it? That's quite a
Clarence.
famous scene.
Yeah, Clarence gets distracted being chased by basically the cops, and he gets distracted, and when he looks around, he drives right into Emil, and Emil just basically disintegrates on the windscreen of the car.
No, he literally splashes on the screen.
Yeah,
literally.
So it's not just his flesh; he's just melted right through.
Oh, it's gross.
It is pretty gross, isn't it? And it ends up with basically, Lewis being shot several times, and RoboCop being basically stabbed through the chest by Clarence Bodiger.
Yeah, but he manages to use that data spike, which came up all the time. Though, thinking, how should you really get with how should RoboCop kill Clarence? And they thought to remember, we had that data spike thing that we came up with. We'll just use that. And it was just like, okay,
absolutely brilliant. The only reason he finds himself in that position is basically one of the other guys, the one he tried to arrest in the club, actually just drops a load of stuff on him. Because it's like a junkyard, isn't it? It's a little bit Superman 3 that way, that kind of junkyard almost. It isn't. It's not the same look. But there's lots of like cranes and stuff lifting garbage and stuff around. And I just love that line at the end where she says, I'm in pretty bad shape. And he says, they'll fix you. They fix everything. I think that sounds a bit company man for what's everything that's been done to him. Just shows what a conflicted being he now is, which obviously we carry on with in the second one.
There's also an element of sarcasm there as well, like a little bit of. So he obviously starts to push. Obviously he's wounded, but he pushes everything off and he drives down to the.
He drives to basically OCP headquarters, doesn't he? Where they were testing Ed 209 at the start.
Blows up Ed 209?
Yeah, because Dick's giving a presentation again, and he's talking about having Ed 209 units all over the place. The old man's not been put off. Presumably he's sold, we fixed whatever the problem is.
Yeah.
And he said there's one outside guard in the building as we speak. And then RoboCop turns out and takes it out, doesn't he? Because of course he's got the weapons that Clarence has just been using.
Basically like kind of rocket launcher type guns, aren't they?
Yeah, just blows him out with one shot.
And then
walks into the building.
Yeah.
Goes up to the long panel. There's a big bank of cathode ray TVs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh god, yeah.
Yeah, which is another thing that dates the film gloriously.
It's futuristic yet dated at the same time.
That's lovely though, isn't it?
Nice
puts the spike in and plays Dick confessing to him earlier in the film.
Yeah.
To which Dick immediately grabs the old man and puts a gun to his head. and demands a chopper, doesn't he, to
Yeah.
get out
Yeah,
of
get
there?
a chopper. Get to the chopper.
The same gun that was used to give to the guy that got shot in the beginning as well.
Yeah,
Oh
absolutely.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so obviously he can't kill him or he can't do anything because
Yeah, he says you can't arrest me. You cannot arrest me.
But he kind of mentions it. So like obviously the old man twigs and goes, "Oh, okay, well, Dick, you're fired." Thank you.
elbows him back, and then he's just shot to shit and falls out the window, and then falls kind of like Hans Gruber style, either way, against basically shoddy back projection.
with the overextended arms, it looks like.
Yeah, it's not a very good shot when you look at it, but it's a great film.
Yeah.
And then he says, "Nice shooting, son. What's your name?"
Murphy.
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 Walks out. Credits.
And that's it. It just kind of chops. Very choppy ending.
How tight is that?
Yeah.
Really
How long is the
tight.
film? I forgot.
102 minutes.
Yeah, that's all you need.
1 hour 42.
To be fair, it did zip by. I didn't notice any part drag. I didn't feel
That
it
may
kind
be
of dragged so
theatrical.
much.
I'm looking at Wikipedia, and I think that's theatrical. I'm sure when I watched it on Netflix, it was 1 hour 43 and something.
Yeah, it was 1 hour 40 something,
So
wasn't it? Other streamings are available.
That extra, not with RoboCop on it though, unless you buy it from like Amazon or something. So I think that's the uncut version, and that extra minute are those few extra bits.
Is the credits.
Yeah. So I just think I don't know how long the sequels are. So, in terms of final thoughts, I don't know how long the sequels are. I guess I'll find out when I sort of come to them over the next couple of weeks. But I was shocked when I put this film on how short it was, because I remember it being quite a dense film. And then you watch it, and it's a handful of very tightly interlinked scenes that all have a point. The only even the sort of more emotional bit, like the going to the home, tells you a lot of stuff. So that's the only bit where the film really takes a breath. I think everyone in it's really terrific, particularly the villains, particularly Ronnie Cox and Kurtwood Smith. I think they really stand out in this one. Murphy's an observer of the world in this, so you don't want too big performance. And actually, Peter Weller, when I watch Peter Weller in this, I mean, he may have been the wrong age, but he's whenever I talk about active and passive characters quite a lot, and I always use that example from Apocalypse Now, that they cast Martin Sheen, because when they put Harvey Keitel in that role, he was just too busy. They needed a man who could stand on a boat and just look out at the world, and you sense things going on behind the eyes. And Peter Weller has that. Peter Weller could have been in that film. He could have played that role. And so he's actually, everything's happening to him in this film. He's actually not that active as a protagonist in a lot of ways, apart from the action bits, but it just works perfectly. I think everyone in the film that speaks has a point. I think some of the gang are a little bit interchangeable in that, apart from Emil, I need to look their names up, but I think that's standard of a film of this type. You get a bunch of sort of cronies around the main bad guy, and you don't really care who they are, and they do tend to over laugh at everything, and that gets a bit tiresome. But apart from that, it's just a really tight film with just so many layers to it that you can ignore if you want. There's nothing worse than a film that tries to sort of moralize to you and force you to think. This film can just be watched as an action film if you want, and it's perfectly serviceable. But there's loads to think about, and it doesn't even have a consistent point of view. In that this film was once described as a liberal film, a fascist film made by liberals. In that it's a liberal perspective shot in the most violent way possible. And I'm not actually sure that that's true, because at the end of the film, Murphy is still very much a company man. And,
No, I didn't think that doesn't hold up with me. Interesting, though.
But then that's to Dave's also a point, which is like it's open to interpretation, isn't it?
Well, it is.
But he's not reprogrammed, and at the start of the second film, he's still an OCP cop. Do you know what I mean? He for me, he finishes the film as a company man, despite everything that's happened to him. He's still protecting the old man. He's still doing right by the law.
He hasn't changed in that respect.
Yeah, you can argue with that, and you might be right. But I just think that, and there are bits in the film. Ed Morton's a bad guy, but he's not a bad guy. So there's different perspectives on all of these things that you can look at. So I think I'll just stop there. I just think this is an outstanding film. It's more niche than some of the stuff we're going to cover. I don't think it's got the wide appeal of a sort of Terminator film. I think I'd be surprised if the Terminator didn't outgross it worldwide. But but it's terrific. It really is. It's very of its decade, which makes it a perfect time capsule film as well. It would be in the debate for like what would you put into really
80s
highlight
films.
what the 80s is.
Yeah, it's very much, as you say, of its time, isn't it? It's
And
very
yes,
much an
it's-
80s film.
It's the future, but it's the future from the 80s perspective. It's an extrapolation of that world. Its view on where capitalism was going, things like Star Wars, things like entertainment, things like newscasting. We were just starting to get to 24-hour news networks and things like that. It's the 80s. It's the 80s look at what the future might be. It's quite a materialistic world and so on, and it's very about the haves and have-nots, which became a sort of big issue in that decade. So I'm just going to stop there, folks. What do you want?
It's almost like a foreboding of like corporatism as well. Like of or crony capitalism, or whatever the terminology is. It's like when the corporations get so big that they end up like taking over.
It's not as blunt as capitalism as bad. It's this type of capitalism. It's capitalism in the wrong hands.
I think this you could easily sort of plan this as like a right wing movie. Do you know what I mean? You could easily believe like a right winger directed this, not just like a liberal. Do you know what I mean?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If I'd read this was a John Milius film, I'd just about believe it. Just about.
Well, he's quite visceral anyway. He's very much like about like I don't know, just give you something that will shock you and make you provoke you to think about something. You know what I mean? That's his style.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all very open to interpretation, but I'll leave it there. What about you guys?
Yeah, I think this is very much like a punk movie. It's very visceral, open interpretation. I think one of the good things about I don't know if they said Paul Well there.
I was like, don't say Paul Well. Peter Well.
Peter Well.
He was a changing man through this. Yes.
I mean, I didn't recognise him in his peacock suit, but yes.
Yeah, not only was he the Modfather, he was also the Robo Modfather.
Yeah, but no. He also Peter Well also had the right voice as well.
Yes.
He had this
The right voice, he had the right chin.
It's distinctive. It's distinctive. You know Peter Weller the moment you hear him.
Yeah.
He is iconic in the role.
And he sounds like almost like a little bit robotic, a little bit
Oh, the voice is processed, which helps. Yeah. It sounds like it's coming. It does sound. It's not treated in that. It doesn't sound quite robotic. It's his voice, but it's got a very slight echo on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not coming out of a human chest.
And it's very formal as well. So he's got a very formal kind of like. Anyway, so yeah. Again, it's very tight, very very interesting to talk about as well. So yeah, it's as you said, Dave. It's very much a film of the 80s, definitely.
I think it's going to be very interesting when we get to the third one, not for the quality of the film, because my memories of it are not good, but I've only seen it once. And it was another film that it was on the shelf for a while. It took a while to be released, and when it did come out, I didn't see it immediately. So I didn't see RoboCop 3 till maybe 2000, something like that, 99, 2000, 2001, somewhere around there. But I can't remember what Robert John Burke's voice sounds like, because it's not him in the third one. And actually, my imagination now, when I think I can't remember that film, is how can you have this without Peter Weller's voice as much as anything else? But there you go. That'll be interesting to see. And how they stretch the franchise, because that's a much more family-friendly film.
Yeah, compared to this one, for sure.
But has it been positive for you, Becca, overall, even though there are elements of it that are a little bit difficult to watch?
Yes, generally it has. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kind of thought, because I know it had like this kind of controversial reputation, and Verhoeven is certainly a controversial director as well. But there's always an inherent truth in the films that he makes, and this is definitely one of the best films of the 80s, along with The Living Daylights and License to Kill, and all the other Bond movies we saw in the 80s.
All the 80s big hitters.
But yeah, it kind of has its kind of vision of the future very much in that 80s prism, where you're still wearing the shoulder pads and the big hair and the neon colours. But no, I'm interested to see the films that followed, because I've not seen them. and also to get around to watching the remake as well, and to see if that still has the same biting satire, I guess. I probably think it won't, but we'll see.
It's recognisably RoboCop, but it's, as I say, I won't spoil it now, but when we get there, it's very much, it's what a studio needs to do to get back on its feet.
Sure, yeah, it was very much of that time, wasn't it? I think it was quick, let's have it. What should we do?
I mean, when you think about it, the only bit I will say is, when you think about it, if you're MGM and you're coming back from bankruptcy and everything you've done's been put on hold, your first priority will be James Bond, because it's your biggest hitter. So obviously Skyfall had already had some development done on it as well, because Sam Mendes carried on as a consultant in that year or so. They weren't formally in any sort of pre-production. So Bond was a little bit more advanced anyway, and there'd been various versions of scripts by Peter Morgan and stuff like that. But that came out in the autumn of 2012. I seem to remember RoboCop remake came out of Aaron Valentine's Day in 2014. Mm-hmm. And when you think, well, it's not going to be as high priority as Bond, so as you're getting Bond finished, you move on to RoboCop. And so, they were looking for franchises, basically.
It's a bit of a kind of placeholder, I guess.
Yeah, they were looking for franchises, and if you're looking for franchises, you need a broader audience. It's the same principle. It has good
cast, though. We've got like Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton.
Yeah.
It's not a train wreck, I promise you.
No, I heard good things. I just kind of missed out on it, unfortunately. I didn't get around to seeing it, sadly.
The thing I'll say from the offshoot is that it doesn't quite really work, but at least it tried. It wasn't like, it isn't a formulaic kind of like slog. It at least went down trying something. You know what I mean? So it's like an honourable failure in that regard.
Yeah, Joel Kinnaman's another one to add to that list.
That's the one.
Like Ryan Reynolds pre-Deadpool, like Affleck for a period of time as well, where they did all the right things for the right reasons and didn't get the results that you'd expect them to get. Joel Kinnaman's a bit like that. He appeared in, if you want a new franchise, something that can be yours and something that you can build, bringing back RoboCop's not a bad bet.
Yeah.
But obviously it didn't quite happen.
Didn't quite set the franchise alight.
Yeah, I mean, Joel Kinnaman's turned up in a few things over the years since he was in House of Cards.
That was it. I was trying to think where I've seen him.
And he's quite. Every time I see him, I think you're quite good. There's not much wrong with him, but we'll address that in actually 4 weeks, as I say, because we've got a RoboCop sequel, then we've got Tarantino, then we've got the third one, then that one. Yeah. So we'll get to it. But as for this film, I might know it's very 80s, but Chris, what else do you know about it?
Fuck all.
I
know it's got a robot and a cop.
It's got a rowboat in it.
A rowboat in it. Oh right.
I did see a meme where it was part cop, part boat, part man, part boat, or cop, and it was a photoshopped one where his bottom half was a boat. Rowboat's cop.
That's all I know.
Cop. I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah, I'd buy a boat for $1. That'd be cool. So, Becca, enlighten us.
I remembered also where I saw Joe Kinnaman. He was in the US remake of The Killing.
I've not seen that. That's a TV show, isn't it? I heard.
Yeah, brilliant Scandi Noir. Check it out.
Is the remake good, or are you looking at
the original is fantastic.
Yeah.
The remake, interesting, I shall say.
Even the Hannah TV series as well. I
saw that. That was I quite enjoyed that film. It was a good film.
He was in Suicide Squad in the role that was originally going to be Tom Hardy, and Tom Hardy dropped out.
Yeah.
But again, he was all right. He was fine.
It was okay. That's what I'm saying about that film. It was all right. Yeah, I've got a couple of fun facts. So, a couple of really random mixed facts. A few facts about the cast, and then the rest of them are facts about Detroit. So, how about that? Obviously, we mentioned at the top of the film, there's a big crossover between the worlds of Batman and Star Trek. This film features actors who also featured in Batman. Peter Weller obviously famously voiced Batman. The guy is obviously related to George Clooney, who played Batman. And Ray Wise has actually voiced Commissioner Gordon in the animated series, along with Danny Hurley, who we mentioned earlier, on the 1992 animated series. And of course, as I just mentioned, 2014 remake features Gary Oldman and Michael Keaton, who both featured in the Batman movies. and in the Dark Knight series. Obviously, the other connection is Star Trek. UFO obviously appeared in Star Trek 3. Ronnie Cox appeared in Next Generation. Kurtwood Smith was actually the president of United Federation of Planets.
He was in Star Trek 6, yes.
Yes.
Looking vaguely, he wasn't a Klingon, but with the hair and everything, he could have been, sort of thing.
Yeah, he had sort of a very unique hairstyle there, didn't he?
Ronnie Cox, just to jump in on that very quickly, the episode you need to look at if you want to see Ronnie Cox in Star Trek The Next Generation, it's a double episode from season 6 called Chain of Command. It's the one where Patrick Stewart's character of Jean-Luc Picard is actually tortured. He's tortured by David Warner, actually.
There are 4 lights.
There are 4 lights. That's that film. But he's taken from command of the Enterprise to go on this mission and replaced by Captain Jellicoe, who immediately pisses the entire crew off, and that's Ronnie Cox. He's really good in it.
So they all play. They're basically Star Trek villains, don't they?
Well, he's not. He's less a villain and more just a bit officious and a bit stern. So he turns up, tries to impose all his ways, is very sort of skeptical of the way the ship's being run, and he's just, you just end up thinking, what an asshole. But he's very, very good in it. So yeah, the episode Chain of Command is the one. Sorry, anyway, carry on, Becca.
No, that's right. No, you carry on, definitely.
Dave's Fun Facts.
Yes.
Well, just that one, but carry on.
Sponsored
Velvety
by Dave's
Facts.
Velvety Facts, there you are.
Brought to you by Ginster's Pasties.
I'll have meaty facts.
You'll have meaty facts. There's no fruit in this film, so you can have
Dave
meaty
has
facts.
velvety facts, and obviously Becca's is fun, so...
Chris Burns Pork Minute.
Or did I say meaty item or something like that? Chris's Meaty Corner.
Pork minute, yes, because it literally is a minute.
It takes you longer than a minute.
Yeah, you'll have heard our licensed Living Daylight show by the time you hear this, and the show notes and stuff. And yes,
Yeah,
Chris
sense.
has some trenchant views on meats.
Hopefully that will make sense. Yeah, so moving
Cold
on.
cut mines, but
Cold meats, yes.
Just cold meats, okay.
Just cold meats. He's not weighed in on like hot food yet. Look for that on our next Bond commentary.
Well, now I know not what to, if I'm making a sandwich, not what to put in a sandwich.
Yeah. Anyway, that and Marmite coming last week.
Cold meats. I think that'd be a really gross combination anyway.
Because how can you not talk about Living Daylights without talking about Marmite?
Cold meats and Marmite. And
the nation's favourite yeast spread.
Yeah. All the relevant stuff. Anyway, Becca, sorry.
Yeah, so all the most important things. So yes, my final 3, I can't count. Yeah, my final facts are about Detroit. Obviously, I didn't realise this. Its city district is actually the second largest in America, bested only by New York City. And it's got like largest seating capacity outside of New York theatres. Fun fact number 4, obviously it's famously the home of Motown, including legendary acts such as Marvin Gaye, Diana Ross and Stevie Wonder. And also apparently it's also the birthplace of techno music, which is quite interesting.
Birthplace of where?
Like techno.
Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah, okay,
well, that's debatable, but
The boxing trainer Emmanuel Stewart worked out of that town as well, so like boxers like Thomas Hearns came from there.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it's famously a city of firsts, obviously in terms of the US. Obviously the first car made there in 1896. Obviously the city that Henry Ford built. First concrete road was made there in 1901 in America. And the first freeway being created there in 1942, and also the first international tunnel. But I can't remember the date. Between Detroit and Canada as well. So the city of innovations and other things. Many technological innovations is what I was trying to say.
Okay, that's fun, folks.
They're not sponsored by the city of Detroit.
So yeah, it would have to be some technological sponsor for that city. So brought to you by the Sinclair C5.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's fun. Was that all of the facts, Becca? Because I feel quite informed.
I had 5, and those are the 5 fun facts that I have.
I think we should just record the podcast again after all that knowledge.
Yeah,
sorry.
because that was embarrassing talking about idiocracy and stuff. I'm so knowledgeless. What's the dumbest thing I can reference? Okay. All right. You can find me at ThePastiKid1976 on Twitter.
You can find me on Cinematronics on Twitter. You can also find all the podcasts on cinematronics.co.uk. All our shows on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, Spotify. Anywhere you care to look, you'll find it.
Yes, so you can find us on Twitter at Expect Us to Talk. You can find us on Facebook, Do Expect Us to Talk, and also the same on YouTube. And yeah, we are everywhere now. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google. Just generally search for us. And
we're like Quantum. We have people everywhere.
Have people everywhere. Florence just used that expression.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've never once heard Florence just use that expression.
Or Florence.
Or Florence.
No,
everywhere.
Florence to Florence.
Who is this Florence? She gets around.
Well, she was on the original pilot of the show, which doesn't exist, thankfully, because it was terrible.
Just forgotten one girl.
And that's measured against the standard we're doing now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it really was bad.
Kicked her out. No good.
No fault.
So Flo, you're out.
Well, no fault.
No.
Okay,
Yes,
anywhere else we can be found? That's it, isn't it?
If you want to email us, you can. Drop us a line at expectustalk@gmail.com. If you've eaten a dodgy sandwich involving cold meats and Marmite, let us know.
Yeah, cold meats or Marmite, or cold meats and Marmite. We don't mind. If you want to write about them both in the same email or email us twice, that's fine.
Likewise, listeners, off topic, if you have any suggestions for us, if there's a film or film series that we haven't covered and you would like us to cover, drop us a line, let us know, tweet us, Facebook. We're all ears.
We'll take a long time to get to them because we know what the next several are, but like somebody genuinely asked for Predator the other day and it wasn't on the list. So I can't remember whether I've now put it on there, but we'll get to it because we all saw that suggestion and thought, yeah, okay, because we don't think of everything. Largely we'll stay away from horror. We'll definitely do a couple of series and we kind of know what they are, but we won't do a lot of that sort of stuff. But yes, suggestions will be considered, definitely, because our list is based on what we can think of and you don't think of everything.
No, I think between us we've got quite a long list.
The
that's
list
growing
is
all the
about
time.
the list is getting on for 50 different things, and this is about the 13th series.
We'll be here forever.
We'll be here forever, which is actually the point, really. We don't really want to run out in 2 years' time and stop, so that's fine. So yeah, absolutely.
We'll be like now playing and doing it after a decade.
Yeah, trouble is now playing genuinely seem to have done anything good. They are really struggling for content now. Well, maybe not in terms of what listeners want to see, because they've got a bit more of a horror bent anyway, but they seem to do series now where I just look at it and go, I don't care.
And some series now are behind a paywall as well.
Well, they've
which is understandable.
Are they doing earnest films now or something?
No, they haven't got quite that far yet.
No,
they're still doing decent content and they're still a decent show. They've monetized more over time in that they used to twice a year do a donation drive where there'd be a series and it might be like 5 episodes of something. But now they've got several levels and you'll end up with like some levels where there are just dozens of podcasts and they're all behind a paywall. Well, up to them, it's their model. They're not beholden to put everything out for free by any means. So
no,
I don't mean to be critical, but it's not what I'd want to do. I don't mind doing Patreon things, but I think Patreon things as an idea, and it's not something we're promoting really at the moment, partly because we've put no thought to it, because money's not really what we think about. So we set up a Patreon and then never really thought about it again. But if you do want a specific show, like we said, think about one-offs you like and series we may not cover. I don't see us thinking about a series and going, we'll put that one behind a paywall. You're not going to find, well, we'll do a donation drive and just put Jaws behind a paywall. We're not going to do that. So yeah,
hopefully we'll have content for years.
Yeah, absolutely, and we will hit. We'll definitely be allowed. We'll definitely be around long enough to hit that episode limit on iTunes. I'd have thought. So yeah, we're not going anywhere. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at now playing, and a lot of the time they're putting new episodes on old series. Well, that's fair enough. But yeah, they seem to sort of be running out of series a little bit. But then they've been at it for years, to be fair. And I don't want anyone who's never heard Now Playing to take that as a negative comment. Actually,
No, please do go and check them out. They're one of our biggest influencers.
They're big influence on me. But
Definitely, likewise.
If I was to name the 3 or 4 podcasts that shape what I am, they're one of them. And I'm now nothing like them, because obviously you take flavours of lots of different things and then almost forget it.
And throwing yourself in there as well. It's like your own thing, isn't it?
But there's 3 of us who turn up every week and do whole series of retrospectives, and that's what they are. They're much more professional than us in good and bad ways, in that they never miss a week. We occasionally miss a week. They put out more content than us, in that they probably do 100 podcasts a year with all.
They do a lot of written content as well.
I don't tend to read a lot of that, but I have read some of it. They do
highly edited as well, so it's all.
But it's highly edited. You won't hear ums and ahs and stuff like that in their shows. They edit them very carefully. But for all of that, they're really, really good. So it's not a criticism at all. They just, like anybody who aren't us, they'll do stuff we wouldn't do because they're not us. So they'll make decisions where you go, I wouldn't do it like that. And one of the things is putting so much of it behind a paywall. It's now at the point where whole series you wouldn't hear without money, and we won't do that. But we and even where someone pays for an episode, we'll put it public for you all. Okay, so that's what we do. But yeah, check out Now Playing, nowplayingpodcast.com. I'm quite happy to promote them because they are an influence.
The take on Dalton though is garbage.
Their take on Bond was garbage because it's not their thing.
Yeah.
But I listened to them all, and it wasn't Arnie's thing, for example.
Yeah.
So
I think Brock was the only big Bond fan, really, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he was an original presenter on the show, and he still does all the voiceover stuff, but with family and that, he doesn't really do it anymore. And he's largely been replaced by Jacob. Their core 3 are Jacob, Stewart, and Arnie. And they're really, really good. I'm more than happy to promote them. But like anything else, people will make decisions where you go, I wouldn't do it like that.
Yeah.
We don't edit as much as they do. I do edit the show, and I do cut things, and I do clean up recordings, and I do very occasionally move things around. But they edit every single cough and everything out, and I wouldn't do that. They're more professional than us. It's as simple as that. But we're not looking to be professional. We're trying to get you listening in on
They probably
chat.
have the tech and the resources to do it, whereas
We're trying to get you
us.
listening in on chat. The more I can forget there's a format, the better. But there you go. Anyway, so that's RoboCop underway. Really, really enjoyed that tonight. So next week, Becca.
Do you expect us to talk? We'll return with RoboCop 2.